Hello, and thank you for visiting Graphene Business Law. If you're watching this video on YouTube, please go ahead and click on the subscribe button down below. Graphene Business Law is a business law firm that posts content primarily aimed at entrepreneurs and small-size business owners. We, of course, post content that is relevant to your legal needs as an entrepreneur and small-size business owner. We're able to help clientele out of Toronto. We're certainly headquartered in Toronto, but we can help you beyond those geographical boundaries as well, so long as you're in Ontario. Today's video is actually aimed at a demographic very near and dear to my heart. As a lawyer, we've all had to go through law school. And law school is a time fraught with anxiety, let's get that out of the door, but uncertainties and confusion. And I find that a lot of persons are very lucky to have easy access to legal information. And by that, I don't mean, the library, the books in the library. I mean, lawyers in their family or lawyers in their networks that they can ask certain questions to, while others might need to book appointments with a career office and might need to research online on their own time and might need to jump through so many other hoops just to get a straight answer on something. I'm not commenting on either of those setups. However, I am aware that different persons in law school have different resources available to them and different people that they can ask certain questions to. Sometimes, somebody knows dozens of lawyers, other times they don't know any lawyers. It's not uncommon if you're in the latter group to be as somebody in law school that's never even spoken to a lawyer before. We all start somewhere. Today's conversation, though, is in regards to a certain payment setup for a certain method through which lawyers are paid in practice, and a method that I remember when I was in law school, a lot of my circle of friends had questions as to what this meant every time it came up. What do I mean by that? I don't mean the way, the client swipes the visa on the machine for a consultation or for a service. I mean specifically the way the lawyer is compensated themselves. And why is this important? Well, if you've had food today or put any sort of clothing on your body, somebody had to pay for that. And it's totally natural and totally normal if you have these questions as a law student, what kind of setup pays what, and what does this mean for you? Maybe you have law school loans, maybe you have other priorities in life. But again, even if that priority is eating bread today, it's going to take money. So in particular, I want to talk about the setup of fee split arrangements and hopefully demystify that. If even one person watches this video, that is value add in my mind, because I remember in my circle of friends in law school, there was more than one person that didn't know what a fee split arrangement meant for a lawyer. A lot of law firms recruit based on how much they pay their associates, and that's not surprising because, as I've mentioned twice in this video now, those law firms know you need to eat bread and wear clothing and have shelter in order to survive. And maybe by paying you a little bit more, they'll think you're more incentivized to work there. So I won't touch on those law firms that pay salaries, or certainly those law firms for which the salary payout is quite easy to Google, right? We can all Google in Ontario, I guess, the Bay Street salaries of the larger firms, and I don't need to walk you through those numbers. Just research it, you'll find it for all of the firms that I'm talking about. However, there is some more variety in payment when it comes to not only smaller firms, but also some quite strong small firms actually, but also some different practice areas, personal injury, insurance litigation. You'll start to see either in some areas of the law or in some structure of law firm more creative payment setups. And I don't mean more creative in any sort of positive or negative way. I just mean it in that it's not the same exact salary every, that you're receiving the same paycheck every single 2 weeks or month, whatever the case may be. And that setup is the fee split arrangement. Now, I remember in law school, a lot of my friends thought to themselves, let's say a law firm has minimum billables of 2,000 hours a year. This number might sound high. To some firms, it might even be low. It all depends on the firm, but don't get fixated on that number. I'm just picking a round number for the purposes of math, and I wouldn't pick 1,000 billable hours because I don't know any firm whose requirement is that low. So 2,000 is the next big round number, and that's why it's getting selected. Okay, so you might think at billing X amount per hour that, how come that those persons on salary are receiving the same check every single time? Well, there's a lot of reasons that I don't need to mention here again as to what may attract certain people to certain firms. However, keeping on track with the fee split, setup I'm trying to demystify here, ultimately the question is, if I bill those same 2,000 hours at another law firm where I'm entitled to fee split, does that really mean that I get, a certain 50%, if the fee split is 50-50, 50% of all of those hours? Because 50% of every one of those 2,000 hours billed will almost always come to higher the conventional salary for at least associates. Partnership is a whole other topic, but if you're watching this in law school, let's baby step it out. You're going to article and then you'll be a first year associate. Now, it doesn't really work like that, because then what would be the incentive of anybody earning a salary? Everybody would be fighting it out for the fee split arrangements. My observations as a lawyer myself are that firms with fee split arrangements don't have the same structure within their hours. So whereas an associate at a large firm may have a strict hourly target to hit, firms with fee split arrangements, there's a few setups. One is you're going to be kept on the books and you truly will bring home a certain percentage of whatever hour you bill. However, owing to the fact that a lot of these firms are small firms, it's quite rare to bill really high numbers at these firms, really high numbers of hours. And I'll tell you why. Logistically, at the small firms, associates are responsible for having a wider range of work that they're responsible for. And that includes a lot of unbillable work. So it's no longer that somebody at a law firm is billing 2,000 hours a year and every single person at a small firm, including the small firms that do fee split, is billing 2,000 hours a year. Those numbers are going to start to differ, which is why we don't see everybody at a small law firm where the setup is fee split driving, the latest Lamborghinis. The numbers don't always come to that. And that's important to know as a law student, right? So the internet usually has more information as to topics that are more common, and the larger firms seem to be a lot more publications there as to their structures, and probably they feel the onus to be a little bit more transparent than the smaller firms where the setup can be anything. And again, if that setup is fee split, it's not going to be the case that you're bringing home 50% of the same exact amount of hours you would bill at a law firm. Those hours are going to differ, and the lower those hours are, of course, the lower the salary is as well, because if you could work 2,000 hours a year, but maybe only 1,000 are billable. So now it's 50% of that. I'm keeping the numbers very, very whole numbers here, right? Now the other question is, so I hope that demystifies a little bit what take-home really means at the smaller firm fee split setup, and why that number is not $1 million at every small firm, despite 2,000 hours times $500 an hour divided in half. That's not what it looks like almost all of the time. Okay. Now another question is how, what are the ranges with fee split? When I was in law school, some firms were really proud, and I mean proud, to recruit students based on the fact that their fee split was a 30% take home for the associate and 70% for the firm. you can imagine that it's almost always going to be higher for the firm, because the firm, depending on the rigor of its setup, is going to have to market you. They'll have to provide you office space. They'll have to provide you the secretary or the clerk or some sort of support staff. Again, not every small firm does this. Some small firms can be quite under-resourced and can be struggling, actually. And that's very important for you to know as law students becoming lawyers as well. There is a lot of struggle within the profession, but including financially, just like every other profession. But in terms of what those numbers are, some firms were proud to say that they can allow you to bring home 30% of every hour you bill. Not every hour you work, every hour you bill. If somebody's proud to tell you can bring home 30, I can imagine that there'd even be firms where you can bring home 10 to 20, right? Which makes 30 something to be proud of. I heard 40 at a bunch of firms when I was in law school. So 40% take home for the associate and 60 for the firm. And actually in a few places, I even heard 50%. I don't think I ever heard more than 50-50. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but in my life as, Pam Matani, I don't think I heard more than 50-50, which can be quite a good deal. Okay, so we've talked about, what hours can really look like behind the scenes at some of these firms offering fee split arrangements, and that it's not the case that they'll allow you to take home 50% of every hour you work at the firm, because a lot of those hours are going to be unbillable owing to the nature of the firm. We've talked about what the fee split arrangement range looks like, and there's a few other details that I'd like to mention in this video. One is, even, how I mentioned that not every hour is billable? Even for the hours that are, there, in my experience, is a push from partners to encourage associates to further discount their hours. So if you've worked, 50 hours on a file, to discount by 10%, even 20%, to pass a certain impression to clients, and there might be a lot of umbrellas through which these hours are discounted. Sometimes, there's a family and friends bucket, and there's a lot of labels we can put on the discount. But ultimately what matters is that the client feels that they got that discount and that they see that they received a discount. So that's yet another important factor to remember in terms of what goes on behind the scenes at some of the larger and even mid-sized firms. I'm not saying there's no pressure to discount at the larger firms, but again, this video is focused mainly on the smaller firms, because that's mainly where you see the fee split arrangements. And also, most firms in Canada are small firms. The large firms employ a lot of people, but most firms, maybe even 90%, over 90% are smaller firms. What else do I think is important to know about fee split? One other caveat, or one other setup that you see, is that the kind of work that comes across your table can really vary with fee split arrangement firms as well. There's a lot of the word varying required to be used in this video, because just as people vary, the firms that people create also vary. Some firms where there's a fee split, I've seen that you are still provided the work as an associate, right? So here's your pile for the week, work through whatever you can, and through whatever you work through as billable hours, that's what will be fee splitting, subject to further discounts and further caveats. However, there are fee split firms where it is a truly eat what you kill setup. And that means you split the fees on hours of work that you bring in through the door. Nobody guarantees you 1 hour of work per week. You bring the files. However, for the value of bringing those firms into those files, those clients into a setup firm, where again, you have your own office and your own support staff, and you can print to your heart's content, and server fees may be covered, and all those other disbursements may be covered. Sometimes work is brought to you with fee split arrangements, but you should really ask clarifying questions as a student as to how much work you can expect from the firm itself that is offering to split hours with you. Because again, some firms guarantee you $0 of work. However, for any hour of work you bring in, they guarantee you the office and the background productions, if you will, okay? I hope this video demystifies at least a little bit about fee split arrangements. You can hopefully see why there are quite a few benefits to the setup. There is, in theory, I mean, I guess we all have 24 hours to the day, so that's a cap, but in theory, there is no cap to how much you can bill on a fee split, depending on the structure of the firm, depending on all the unbillable work you're doing, depending on the, discounts stick over your head. Whereas somebody working on salary will only have that same exact number per paycheck plus bonus, okay? Also, certain personality types are far more attracted to fee split. If you know your networking skills and your speaking skills and your people skills are not that high, and that's okay, by the way. For the law, this video is very clearly oriented toward law school students. If those skills are not your strengths, you certainly have other strengths, and focus on your strength. It's fine. We don't all need to speak, be the smoothest speakers in the room. It's fine. You might be the best drafter ever. It doesn't matter if you're not able to network through the room like a oiled up butterfly. It's okay. But if you really do know that about yourself and you're at a fee split firm where you have to bring in your own hours, how good of a personality fit is that, right? You're going to want to think about those things. So there are pros and there are cons. Another con, maybe it has even nothing to do with your strengths or weaknesses or whatever the case may be. Look at what's happened to the economy with COVID. They're, a salaried firm, on the other hand, of that number not being able to increase paycheck to paycheck to paycheck on average, is the fact that it shouldn't decrease too much. But with fee split, who's guaranteeing you a single dollar on the next paycheck, right? So there are benefits, and as with the pros, there are cons to the fee split arrangements. But I wanted to shine some light on what some questions that I have heard through and through in my days as a law school student were as to the fee split arrangement. It's not one that you might find a lot of information on online, but it is a setup that is fairly common, again, depending on the law firm structure, but also on the industry. Other fee setups you'll have heard of, other buzzwords. Certainly you've heard of contingency fees if you've made it through a few weeks or a few months in law school. That's a topic maybe I'll save for another video, because I suspect this one's getting quite long. But there are plenty of fee structures out there outside of the salary. And the more you know about these things, the better a choice you can make. And that's important to me as a lawyer, to be able to share with the future of the legal profession. At the end of the day, it's what you'll be bringing home is a topic that is extremely important to know, because you need to eat, you need to live, as does everybody watching this video. So I hope this video has helped even one law school student. Feel free to email me at info@graphenebusinesslaw.ca. I do get some requests from time to time, and that's in part what helps fuel these videos, in addition to my own experiences and my own question marks in law school. Thank you for watching this video. And if you're an entrepreneur or small-sized business owner that's watched this video, well, I certainly thank you very much for your time as well. And here at Graphene Business Law, we certainly have a passion for helping, and that includes helping law school students. But certainly we're very excited to help out our clients as well with launching, growing, and concluding their business. Thank you very much for watching.